There is something deeply wrong with the milk in your refrigerator. For thousands of years, milk was considered one of nature's most complete foods. It built strong bones, sustained entire communities through harsh winters, and was so valuable that laws were written to protect its purity. But today, that same word, milk, describes a sterile, homogenized liquid that triggers digestive distress in many people and is linked to allergic reactions and inflammatory responses in a significant portion of those who drink it. Your grandfather drank fresh milk from the farm his entire life and never had a problem. So, what changed? The answer isn't lactose intolerance. The answer is that modern milk has been so heavily processed, so fundamentally altered, that your body struggles to recognize it as the nourishing food it once was. In 1387, in a farming village outside Canterbury, a family of 5 could survive the winter on the milk from 2 cows. That milk provided complete protein, healthy fats, fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and K2, beneficial bacteria, and enzymes that aided digestion. Children grew strong. Adults maintained muscle and bone density. The elderly stayed mobile into their 70s. This wasn't luck. This was nutrition delivered in its most bioavailable form. Medieval milk came warm from the cow, consumed within hours, rich with cream that rose to the top, teeming with beneficial microorganisms that protected the gut. It was alive. The milk in your grocery store has been dead for weeks. Fast forward to today. Lactose intolerance affects an estimated 68% of the global population to some degree, though rates vary dramatically, over 90% in East Asian populations, but only 5% in Northern Europeans. Milk allergies are among the most common food allergies in children. Doctors routinely recommend eliminating dairy to reduce inflammation, sinus congestion, and skin conditions. Entire industries have sprung up selling almond milk, oat milk, soy milk, anything but real milk, because real milk makes people sick. But here's what they won't tell you. The problem isn't milk itself. The problem is what we've done to it. Modern milk is pasteurized at temperatures that destroy beneficial components, homogenized under pressure that alters fat structure, separated and recombined to standardize fat content, then fortified with synthetic vitamins to replace what processing removed. This isn't milk the way your body was designed to receive it. It's a reconstituted dairy product optimized for shelf life and profit margins, not human health. Before we go further, drop a comment below. Do you drink milk? Have you ever felt bloated, congested, or inflamed after drinking it? Or have you given up dairy entirely because you thought you were intolerant? Let us know, because what you're about to learn will change how you see every gallon on the shelf. Walk into any supermarket and you'll see rows of plastic jugs labeled whole milk, 2%, skim, lactose-free, organic, ultra-pasteurized. All of them share one thing. They've been heat-treated to kill bacteria. Pasteurization, named after Louis Pasteur, was introduced in the late 1800s as a public health measure to prevent the spread of tuberculosis and other diseases transmitted through contaminated milk. In crowded, filthy industrial dairies where cows stood in their own waste and were fed distillery slop, pasteurization made sense. It saved lives. But it also fundamentally changed the milk. Pasteurization heats milk to at least 161 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 seconds. Ultra-pasteurization, increasingly common today, heats it to 280 degrees Fahrenheit for just 2 seconds. These temperatures destroy not just harmful bacteria, but also beneficial bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium that support gut health. Heat also denatures proteins, altering their structure in ways that may make them harder to digest and more likely to trigger immune responses in sensitive individuals. It destroys enzymes like lipase, which helps break down fats, and phosphatase, which aids in mineral absorption. Medieval milk was raw. The beneficial bacteria in raw milk could pre-digest some components through natural fermentation. and the full complex of enzymes, fats and proteins work together as nature intended. When you drink heavily processed milk, you're consuming a food that's been stripped of many elements that may have aided digestibility. Then there's homogenization. This process forces milk through a fine screen under high pressure, breaking up the fat globules so the cream doesn't separate and rise to the top. It creates a uniform texture that consumers expect. But it also changes the fat structure. Natural milk fat globules are large, surrounded by a protective membrane. Homogenized fat globules are tiny, with altered membranes. Some researchers hypothesize that these smaller particles may pass through the gut lining more easily, potentially contributing to inflammatory responses. While this remains debated, the correlation between widespread homogenization, standard since the 1930s, and increasing dairy sensitivities is worth examining. Medieval milk was never homogenized. The cream rose to the top. You skimmed it off to make butter and cheese, or you shook the container to mix it back in. Either way, the fat structure remained intact. Modern dairies also standardize fat content. Milk is separated into cream and skim milk, then recombined to hit exact percentages. Whole milk is 3.25% fat. 2% is exactly that. Skim milk has the fat removed entirely. Then synthetic vitamins A and D are added back because those vitamins are fat-soluble and were lost with the cream. This process treats milk like a chemical formula instead of a whole food. Medieval milk had a fat content that varied by season, by breed, by what the cow ate. In spring, when cows grazed on fresh grass, the milk was rich in omega-3 fatty acids and beta-carotene, giving it a golden color. In winter, when cows ate hay, the fat content shifted slightly. This variation was natural. Standardization removes that complexity. The cows themselves are fundamentally different. Medieval cows were small, hardy breeds that grazed on pasture year-round in temperate climates or were fed hay and root vegetables in winter. They produced milk only when nursing calves, about 1,500 to 2,000 pounds of milk per year. Modern Holstein cows, the dominant breed in industrial dairies, have been bred to produce over 23,000 pounds of milk per year. They're fed a high-energy diet of corn, soy, and grains, foods that cows are not designed to digest efficiently. This diet causes digestive stress, often requiring antibiotics to prevent infection. It also changes the nutritional profile of the milk. Research shows that grain-fed cows produce milk with lower omega-3 fatty acids, lower conjugated linoleic acid, CLA, a fat associated with immune support and reduced inflammation, and lower levels of vitamins E and beta-carotene. Grass-fed cows, like medieval cows, produce milk that is nutritionally superior by multiple measures. Studies have found that pasture-raised cows produce milk with up to 5 times more CLA than grain-fed cows, along with significantly higher omega-3 fatty acids and greater concentrations of fat-soluble vitamins. Modern industrial milk is also a product of confinement. Cows in large-scale dairies often spend their lives indoors, standing on concrete, never seeing a pasture. The stress weakens their immune systems. Mastitis, infection of the udder, is common. When infection occurs, pus cells enter the milk. Pasteurization kills the bacteria, but the somatic cell count, a measure of these cells in milk, remains. US regulations allow up to 750,000 somatic cells per milliliter. Europe allows 400,000. Medieval milk from healthy cows grazing on pasture faced these issues less frequently because the animals lived in conditions suited to their nature, though mastitis certainly existed in smaller scale operations as well. If this is valuable to you, hit that like button. It helps this information reach people who need it. Let's talk about the protein structure, because this is where important differences emerge. Milk contains 2 main types of protein, whey and casein. Casein makes up about 80% of milk protein and comes in different forms. The most common forms are A1 beta-casein and A2 beta-casein. Modern Holstein cows produce mostly A1 beta-casein. When digested, A1 breaks down into a peptide called beta-casomorphin 7, or BCM7. Some studies have linked this peptide to digestive discomfort and inflammatory responses, though research is ongoing and results are mixed. Medieval cows and many heritage breeds today, like Jerseys, Guernseys and Brown Swiss, produce mostly a 2-beta-casein, which does not produce BCM7 during digestion. People who react poorly to conventional milk sometimes report fewer symptoms with A2 milk. The difference may be the cow breed, not the person's digestive capacity. Pasteurization also affects protein structure. Heat causes proteins to clump and denature, changing their three-dimensional shape. Some researchers suggest this may make them harder to digest and more likely to be recognized as foreign by the immune system. Raw milk proteins remain in their natural form. Then there's the fat. Raw milk fat is a complex mixture of saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fats, along with fat-soluble vitamins and cholesterol. Cholesterol is essential for hormone production, brain function, and cell membrane integrity. Medieval people consumed full-fat dairy without guilt, and they didn't suffer from the heart disease epidemic we see today. Multiple studies have now found no association between full-fat dairy consumption and heart disease. Some studies even suggest a protective effect. The problem isn't the fat. The problem emerges when fat is removed, processed, and the product is marketed as healthier when it may actually be less nourishing. Modern milk is also fortified with synthetic vitamins, because pasteurization affects vitamin content, and because removing fat removes fat-soluble vitamins, dairies add them back synthetically. But synthetic vitamins may not be equivalent to natural vitamins in terms of absorption and utilization. Your body was designed to receive vitamin A from cream, not from synthetic retinol palmitate added to skim milk. Fortification is a band-aid covering up nutritional alteration. In 2011, a study published in the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology followed over 8,000 children in Europe. Researchers found that children who consumed raw, unprocessed farm milk had significantly lower rates of asthma, allergies, and eczema compared to children who drank pasteurized milk. The protective effect was linked to the beneficial bacteria and other bioactive components in raw milk, which appeared to support immune development and reduce inflammatory responses. This wasn't a small effect. The reduction in allergies and asthma was substantial enough that researchers called for further investigation into which components of raw milk provided protection. In the United States, despite heavy regulation and restrictions on raw milk sales, a growing number of consumers are seeking it out. Farmers who sell raw milk directly to consumers report that their customers include people who had given up dairy entirely, convinced they were lactose intolerant, only to discover they could drink raw milk without the symptoms they experienced with pasteurized milk. Now, it's important to note, raw milk does carry real risks if it comes from unhealthy animals or unsanitary conditions. Outbreaks of illness from contaminated raw milk do occur, but countries like France, Switzerland, and the Netherlands allow regulated raw milk sales and maintain strong safety records through strict hygiene standards and testing protocols. The issue isn't raw milk inherently. The issue is milk from sick cows in filthy conditions. Clean milk from healthy, pasture-raised cows has sustained human health throughout recorded history. Historically, skeletal evidence from medieval populations shows generally good bone density and robust dental health, markers consistent with adequate calcium and vitamin D intake. While other factors like physical activity and shorter lifespans complicate direct comparisons, traditional dairy clearly provided bioavailable nutrition. Contrast that with today, where despite fortified milk and calcium supplements, osteoporosis remains a significant concern, particularly as populations age longer. Multiple factors contribute to bone health, but the body appears to need the full complex of nutrients in whole, unprocessed dairy to build and maintain bone effectively. Medieval milk provided that. Modern processed milk may not deliver those nutrients as effectively. The shift began in the late 19th century with urbanization. As cities grew, milk had to travel farther from farm to table. Urban dairies sprang up, cramming cows into filthy sheds, feeding them distillery waste, and producing milk that was genuinely dangerous. Outbreaks of tuberculosis, typhoid, and scarlet fever were traced to contaminated milk. Pasteurization was introduced as an emergency measure, and it worked. Deaths dropped dramatically. But instead of improving dairy conditions, cleaning up farms, ensuring cows were healthy, raising standards, the industry chose to keep the problematic system and simply heat-treat the milk to make it safe. Pasteurization became a shortcut that allowed lower-quality milk to be sold without immediate health consequences. Standards for cow health, feed quality, and hygiene were never prioritized to the degree they could have been because pasteurization masked the symptoms. By the mid-20th century, dairy had become fully industrialized. The goal was volume and efficiency. Selective breeding created cows that produced massive quantities of milk. Confinement housing reduced labor costs. Grain-based feed increased yields. Pasteurization, homogenization, and refrigeration allowed milk to be transported nationally. The result was cheap, abundant milk. But it was nutritionally altered and increasingly difficult for many people to digest. As health problems mounted, the industry didn't question the product. They blamed the consumer. You're lactose intolerant. You're allergic. Try our lactose-free formula. Try our skim milk. Try our fortified version. Each solution added more processing, more expense, more distance from the original food. Meanwhile, raw milk was restricted. Regulations were passed in most US states banning or heavily limiting its sale. The stated justification was safety, and contaminated raw milk does pose real risks. But the practical effect served industrial interests as well. Raw milk can't be mass-produced or transported long distances. It requires healthy cows, clean facilities, and local distribution. It's inherently small-scale. Whether by design or consequence, regulations made it nearly impossible for small producers to compete with industrial operations. If you're finding this valuable, hit subscribe. We're uncovering the knowledge the food industry would rather you forget. If you want to drink milk that nourishes instead of harms, you have several paths forward. First, seek out raw milk if it's legal and accessible in your area. Depending on where you live, it may be available directly from farms, through herd share programs, or at farmers' markets. Look for farms that pasture-raise their cows. Practice rotational grazing and test their milk regularly for safety. Raw milk from healthy grass-fed cows is one of the most nutrient-dense foods you can consume. It's rich in beneficial bacteria, enzymes, vitamins, healthy fats, and complete protein. Many people who thought they were lactose intolerant discover they can drink raw milk without the symptoms they experienced with pasteurized versions. Second, if raw milk isn't accessible, seek out low-temperature pasteurized, non-homogenized milk from grass-fed cows. Some small dairies use gentler pasteurization methods that preserve more of the milk's beneficial properties. Non-homogenized milk, often sold in glass bottles with cream on top, retains the natural fat structure. Look for brands that emphasize pasture-raised, A2 protein, or organic certification from small farms. These aren't perfect, but they're far superior to conventional industrial milk. Third, consider fermented dairy. Yogurt, kefir, and aged cheeses made from high-quality milk are easier to digest because the fermentation process breaks down lactose and alters proteins. Choose full-fat versions made from organic or grass-fed milk. Avoid products with added sugars, thickeners, or artificial flavors. Traditional fermented dairy, like the Clabber and buttermilk medieval families consumed, is a powerful probiotic food that supports gut health and immune function. Fourth, if you choose to avoid dairy entirely, understand that the issue may not be dairy itself, but industrial processing. Many people who eliminate pasteurized, homogenized milk feel better simply because they've removed a trigger. But But don't assume all dairy is the problem. Experiment with raw or minimally processed options before writing off an entire food group that sustained human health for millennia. The medieval peasant with his fresh bucket of milk wasn't primitive. He was drinking a complete, living food that had nourished humanity for thousands of years. We traded that for convenience, shelf life, and industrial efficiency, and we're paying the price in digestive disorders, chronic inflammation, and weakened immunity. The solution isn't to avoid milk. The solution is to demand real milk. Milk from cows that graze on pasture. Milk that hasn't been cooked at extreme temperatures, pressurized, or chemically altered. Milk that your great-grandfather would recognize as milk. The secret was never lost. It was just buried under decades of industrial processing. Every time you choose real milk over industrial product, you reclaim a piece of that ancient wisdom. Wisdom that kept people strong when life was hard. Wisdom that still works today. What's your experience with milk? Can you drink it, or have you given up? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe and let's keep digging up what they buried.